Well, I think I'd like to change the focus just a little bit. You know, it's very important for the education of art and design students, the media of film and science fiction film. But in a way, film is an old media, and what we're really interested in is transmedia and in the question of creative coding. I think we need a new media, which is also an active media, and it's a combination of creating something as a practical project, as a designer, and also being involved with the importance of narrative, storytelling, and in a new way, non-linear narratives, because film and novels are classical linear narratives. So we want to look at computer games and the interactivity and the non-linear, non-conventional narrative of computer games, and also how can art and design students become coders. And I think we need a new kind of tool, a new kind of programming environment that is story-centered, narrative-centered, language-centered. Because we know now that students, designers, should learn how to code. It's obvious to make design projects today, you have to be involved with code, with computer technology, with interactive media projects that you have to code. However, we have the wrong interface to making code, to writing code, because the way that engineers and classical programmers write software is with Java, C++, or even in the best case with HTML, JavaScript, CSS, but that's still, it's too difficult, it's too detail oriented, it involves an engineering mindset. You can see we end up using something like jQuery, which is just libraries of functions that someone else wrote the code. Then we had a wave of visual-centered development tools like processing, which are very good, but they're very good at producing visual art, people who want to make visual intensive art. So I think where designers and design students, what we really need is new software development, new generative art programming environment where you're not working with variables and classes and methods and attributes like in Java or JavaScript, but you're actually working with a story, with a storyboard, with a script. So you can produce software, but you don't have to learn JavaScript or Java, which is ridiculous, really, to expect that from creative people. So we have already the precedent of processing, which did this for visual-oriented creative projects, and now we need to develop this tool for making something like computer games, but actually more interesting than computer games, because computer games have the strength of interactivity, participation, many options, non-linear navigation, but we also want ideas from science fiction, from films, which are rich in ideas and which make resonance in the audience. So I think the transdisciplinary is an intermedia project where we bring together the strength of film, which is a classical linear genre of media, but is rich in ideas, and the non-linearity of computer games, and makes something intermediate and have a new way of writing code through a story construction interface, which is about language. So I think we will soon see projects in this area. We will soon see open source projects and startup companies making this new kind of toolkit which I just described.
That's great.
Yes, it's first of all to stop dividing ideas and practice. In our university educational system, these two things are completely separated. In the universities, we have professors teaching subjects like philosophy, art history, media theory, sociology, and that's supposedly for our general education. The general, so if you a student learns philosophy, then they read Adorno or Kant, or, and it's for your education. But that doesn't really help. What we need is ideas taught in a hybrid way, hybrid of theory and practice, ideas which support the design students in the making of their projects, of their practical design projects. Then we have many professors teaching filmmaking or topography or creative coding, something practical but without much humanities knowledge. So we have to invent a new kind of design academy where the teaching is hybrid and it's on the border between theory and practice, and the inspiration, creativity, ideas, knowledge, so-called theory, is directly useful in the design project of the student, which we can call interactive media design.
Which is actually what we are trying to do with our hybrid design lab called Swarm in the next months.
Right, so the project of Swarm to create a new design academy in Milano should be inspired by this hybrid vision.
Yeah, and going back to science fiction movies, and always linked to the idea of creating some program inside Swarm, we are thinking, for example, how a young person or young designer that wants to start this journey of approaching science fiction movie to get inspired, do you have some recommendation to these young people of the first movies that they should watch, they should look at?
Yeah, well, design should be a social responsible design of the future to improve society, and these great science fiction films are social commentaries. I would say there are about 20 science fiction films which belong to the basic education of the designer. We saw last night with Blade Runner the architecture of the futuristic city. You can go back to Fritz Lang Metropolis of 1927, which was the first real science fiction film. The films of Terry Gilliam, I think this triad of films, Brazil, 12 Monkeys, and the Zero Theorem, which is a recent film of 2014, is showing a futuristic city and bureaucracy and automation. Certainly there are great films about time travel, like 12 Monkeys is also about time travel. I think Star Trek is still very important. No, it's not only films but also TV series. 2001's A Space Odyssey of Stanley Kubrick, I think is the best science fiction film ever made, because it raises the question, what is technology? You know, the mutation from the apes to humans at the beginning of the film, showing how technology as a tool inspired the apes to become human, but through power and violence and killing and domination of nature. And now in the 21st century, technology is something else. It's not a tool, it's not for making war, it's instead an ecosystem, an environment, and equal involvement with nature. You know, the films about androids and robots that we looked at last night.
Yeah.
Also films about computer games like Tron. Tron is a classic film about computer gamer is showing a society where humans become avatars in virtual worlds.
So
I think that obviously we have great advances in artificial intelligence coming from engineering and from the technical side. In Asia, in Japan, there we have many robots, many robotic and android projects from computer industry. I think we come to the point where we need to make a basic philosophical change in how we regard artificial intelligence, living entities like if self-driving car or robot or software. If a software is a doctor program giving us medical advice, or we're going to have sexual partners and life partners and friends like the movie Her. We got to start to regard these technological AI entities as having an identity subjectivity, life, rights of their own. That the philosophical tradition of the West does not prepare us to regard AI entities as alive and having identity and subjectivity. Many philosophy professors will say, no, that's not possible. A car is just a bunch of mechanical parts. It always was and it always will be. That's wrong, and that's coming from Descartes, because Descartes made a separation between mind and body and between humans and animals. Descartes said animals are automata. Animals are automata, plant life is automata, the human body is automata. The only dimension that Descartes recognized as having subjectivity is the human mind, when he said, I think, therefore I am. So this is wrong, because we know that animals, for example, have feelings and subjectivity and some kind of consciousness. So we really have to confront the reality that software and artificial intelligence is going to have self-awareness. That's the definition of AI. What's the difference between a computer program and AI, right? We always said AI is when the computer program can self-evolve and becomes autonomous and can have creative, original thoughts, and it's no longer just only the possibilities that the programmer programmed in to the software. So we need like a philosophical kick to society and everyone to be aware of recognizing the life of the AI. It's also good, it's good for us. We're going into a world where there will be many artificial intelligence all around us. So it's better for us to live in an ecosystem, to live in an environment, to interact with spaces and experiences as an ecosystem. That means let's go beyond subject and object. You see, it's like I'm living in a world. We are taught in the philosophical worldview of Western society, I am the subject and I'm living in a world of objects, and these objects are things, mechanical, dead, they are not alive, I am the subject. That's bad for me, this worldview. It makes me, I'm in a struggle with the world, I'm in a conflict with the world, because I'm the subject, everything is objects. Let's forget about that and instead live in an ecosystem, live more in harmony with our surroundings, with our environment. It's not me the subject, those as objects, it's more flowing and equal and partnership and participation. Then I have much more possibilities for enjoyable experiences.
So,
Yes, we have to go beyond this capitalist idea of work. and move towards creativity and play. So the androids is an opportunity for us to transform how we think of our own activity in the daily life, to get away from economics as determining what we have to do. You know, we think we have to work because of economics. Instead, I would say, so the power of technology, I mean, technology is the application of human intelligence in practical projects. Technology is human intelligence realized practically. So let's let's develop technology that transforms us away from work and beyond work, instead of assuming that work dominates and technology is distributing who is going to do the work, which is a trivial change compared to the change of play, creativity, freedom, diversity of activities. Yes. Well, I noticed, interestingly, that there is a certain cultural imperialism, one-way street between America and Europe. So I noticed that the passing of Dario Fo was not mentioned at all in the American media, because I guess Dario Fo is well known in Europe, not only in Italy, but I think he's not known in America, and that's really ironic, strange thing that he passed away on the same day that Bob Dylan receives the Nobel Prize in Literature, and Dario Fo was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature, and he was the first who got the Nobel Prize who was not a writer, a novelist, a poet in the classical sense. So it was an expansion of the scope of the Literature Nobel Prize, because Dario Fo is primarily making theater and political satire through theater. So in a way, without Dario Fo having won, Bob Dylan would not win today. But the American media just ignored the passing of Dario Fo. So that's very ironic, I guess. I mean, I'm not against Bob Dylan getting the Nobel Prize for Literature, obviously not. It's an example of intermedia. I mean, I don't have a position about Nobel Prizes. I think, obviously, the categories of Nobel Prizes were created a very long time ago. For example, there's no Nobel Prize for computer science, right? So I mean, why doesn't Tim Berners-Lee, who invented World Wide Web, why doesn't he get a Nobel Prize? I guess they would have to give it in physics, but that doesn't necessarily make sense.
Another relevant news of these days is the whole new world of
Trump?
democracy that Donald Trump is creating and destroying at the same time. He's transforming democracy
Yes.
in a reality show.
I think, Stefano Murti asked me this question last night, and I don't think I gave a complete answer. I think, we see now that Donald Trump is probably going to lose, thank God, but it's still a very big phenomenon that he became the nominee of the Republican Party and that he came this far. I would say it's a marriage between fascism and hypermodernism. What's new about Donald Trump is his supporters, which is about 40% of Americans supporting Donald Trump. These are people who want the problems of society to be solved by an authoritarian leader, by a dictator, by a strong man. So this is connected with the history of fascist totalitarian movements like Hitler, Mussolini. With Putin, we see that. We have a terrible situation in Europe also with the rise of nationalist, populist movements, where you have essentially people voting as a protest against the establishment, like the European Union, but there's a kind of irresponsibility in that they vote as a protest and they don't want to look at what these politicians really stand for, what they really believe, what they would do. Like the Brexit vote in England was, I think, irresponsible, because you can understand the protest, the frustration, dissatisfaction with the EU, but what is really going to happen? What constructive ideas does someone like Donald Trump have, or a party like Alternative for Deutschland in Germany? What constructive ideas do they really have? In any case, this idea, solve the problems of society with a strong man, with a dictator, this is a classic idea from the 20th century, from Hitler and Mussolini. But now with Donald Trump, it's combined with hypermodernist like reality TV. In other words, it's something old, fascism, but also something very contemporary, postmodern, hypermodernism, the importance of reality TV, of new media, disappearance of the discourse of true and false. That's the erosion of democracy on another level, because democracy is supposed to be to respect facts and what really is true and false and what happened, and Donald Trump represents the disappearance of the reference of facts, and if something is really true. Postmodernism is about, you can say anything in the media, and the rhetorical power of what you say becomes self-driving. Okay.